Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We are joined today by someone that we all appreciate very much. Steve Johnson, FX legend. If you are a Ghostbusters fan and if you're watching this, you know this man and his work. Welcome, Steve. How's quarantine going for you over there?
Hey, how are you guys? How do you think it's going? It's, you know,
Not great.
we went, but thank God I got my hair cut because I went 4 months without a haircut. And my God, Bozo called. He needs his hair back by 5. You're okay. It looked so fucking awful. And, you know, even though nothing's open, when the hair salon's opened, I finally rushed down, got my hair cut. Because, you know, even if nobody else is going to see me except on things like this, I see myself in the mirror all the time and I look like shit for 4 fucking months. So I went and got my hair cut, thank God, because now all the hair salons are shut down again and everything's shut down again. And, you know, I've become over the years not nearly as, particularly since I've been writing a lot, not nearly as social as I used to be, but still, it wasn't like this. It's like you just can't, I mean, nobody is really stopping you from doing things, but except for yourself. But I've had it. I can't take it anymore. And in a way, I almost understand all these people, and I'm not one of them. I mean, I wear my mask and maintain social distancing and don't see friends. But I can kind of understand why people have finally cracked over this. Because, you know, we're human beings. We're pack animals, and you need to hug people, and you need to be around people. And fuck. But, you know, I do have this little guy.
Oh, cool.
Oh, there he is.
Yes, he doesn't want to. He hates it. He's my Hemingway writing buddy.
Cool.
So yes, that's how it's going. And, you know, on top of everything else, the film industry is, and I'm glad we're talking about this because, you know, Ghostbusters at this point, it's like the Civil War. It's like, how much more can you say about it? Everything that's been said about the Civil War, and all the books that have been read, there's nothing else to say. So let's talk about something other than Ghostbusters. How do you think your fans will like that?
Right. It is funny. We notice like there's like 1 or 2 new Ghostbusters documentaries that comes out, you know, per year, and basically you can kind of quote everybody's anecdotes and stories at this point.
I know, you know, I go to conventions and, you know, I wonder how many people have sat in these audiences when I'm speaking and they ask Ghostbusters questions. How many people are like, Jesus Christ, he's like your senile great-grandmother who tells you the same story over and over again, which has always amazed me because if you're around a woman or a man that tells the same story over and over again, sometimes people react in the following way. They'll like, Jesus fucking Christ, and start to roll their eyes and go, God damn it, Grandma. But the thing that's so rude about that to me is because to the person that's senile, it's the first time they've ever told that story, and then all their family members are reacting with hatred and boredom. It's like, why did my family get so mad at me? Telling them a good story.
That's funny.
We've heard the story 20 times, Grandma.
Right. Most famously, we joke about it all the time is when Ivan Reitman tells the story of his guys coming down, you know, 5th Avenue with their packs on and him having shivers go up his spine. It's like, we know about the shivers. We've been hearing about it for 36 years. We know about them.
I know. And, you know, one of the other problems is when you get used to doing, you know, public appearances about, you know, it's not just Ghostbusters. It's all the, you know, it's like my Abyss stories, all the stories on the bigger movies that I've done. You learn them and you learn a kind of a comedic rhythm to them. And particularly since I've written the series of books, the Rubberhead series, it's like they're your fallback because they're easy to flow into that rhythm. And it's like, what happened to all the other stories? It's just, and that's another really funny thing about memory. And it's a really funny thing about writing down your memory is that, you know, obviously in my book series in Rubberhead, it's set in present tense. It's like you're a fly on the wall. So, you know, the conversations are happening and everything's happening in real time. So I had to elaborate. I had to nudge the truth a little bit to make the, you know, to draw the reader in and make it appear to be more fictional. But what happens as a result of that is after you've read your own work 100 times at least, which is, you know, when in the editing process, you have to, something happens and you don't remember if what you wrote is the true version or if there's some other version out there that really is the truth. because I don't know, did you guys read Rubberhead 1, the Ghostbusters story?
I was listening to the audiobook, and
Yeah.
I loved how at the beginning of it, you just kind of gave that warning. This is the stories to the best of my knowledge, and over time and things develop, but I'm going to tell them to you like I know them.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a hint. The ghost of John Belushi did not actually show up that night and model for me. He didn't really do it.
That's great.
Yeah,
It's an interesting dovetail. I had a clarifying question about the Belushi thing. So maybe it comes down to memory, but I've heard two different versions about the story you tell about how overnight you had to make it more John Belushi than it was.
Right.
So I heard the story that you did, and then that's what you presented. And then the other story was that you didn't make it more John Belushi. You took it in, you're like, yeah, here it is. It's John Belushi. And they were like, fantastic. This is great.
Yeah, well, the second version is the truth. There's no way I could have it could have completely reworked that sculpture in the period of one night. And that's, something that a lot of really good designers in this industry know, unfortunately, is that when your art director or your producer or your production designer or your director comes in and says, make these changes, more often than not, if you don't make them, they'll come back and go, that's right, that's exactly what I was looking for. It happens all the time.
That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So let's go real quick. For those who don't know, how did you get started in the film industry? Were you always a creative as a child? Like, what brought you to Hollywood?
As a kid, I was always creative. I came out of the womb wanting to create things, actually. I can't remember a time when I didn't want to make things. So, I discovered Hammer and, the Hammer classics, the horror films and the classic Universals. And I just became incredibly enamored by it and started trying to figure out on my own in the 60s in Texas, which was quite difficult because there were no schools like the Stan Winston School of Character Arts. There were no books on it. So I just had to figure it out by trial and error. And the turning point was when I think I was 15 or 16. I met Rick Baker. He came to one of the first science fiction and horror conventions ever in Houston, Texas. I think it was called, I don't know what it was called, but and he spoke. He had just finished King Kong and Star Wars and The Incredible Melting Man, and I had a little thin portfolio. See, I'm telling the same story I tell all the time. I'm sure you guys have heard it. I had this little thin portfolio, and I worked up the nerve to meet him. And he gave me his phone number and said, "Listen, if you ever come out to California, I'll see what I can do." And so as soon as I was 18, I got in my car and drove out there and knocked on his door, and he said, "Who the hell are you?"
I love how that happened.
But ultimately, I wasn't good enough. I didn't, I hadn't practiced professional techniques at that point. So this was 1978. So he introduced me to both Greg Canham and Rob Bottin, who I'm sure a lot of your listeners will know. And I cut my teeth on their projects for the first couple of years before Rick hired me on American Werewolf in London. And that was like the first big movie I did, actually.
Cool. Steve, I have a question. Is it, you've had this career that, has stretched multiple decades, and you've seen a lot of different versions of what works in Hollywood and what doesn't. And specifically over the past 5 or 10 years, you kind of have this notion that going back to more practical effects and more, being a little bit less dependent on CG or VFX, just high level general opinion of where we're at now and what we can, look forward to over the next 10 years as far as innovation goes. Do you kind of feel that as you're going through the motions, or?
Yeah, it's strange. That's a really good question, because as soon as, even before Jurassic Park, the first Jurassic Park came out, all of us, from stop motion animators like Phil Tippett to all of us effects guys, started going, oh my God, there's going to be no business at all in just a handful of years. And that did happen because, at that point, directors and producers and writers didn't really, the same kind of thing happened as when, American Werewolf came out. All the directors and writers said, look, we can do anything now, man turned into a werewolf. Let's just write whatever we want, and those effects guys will figure out how to do it. So it kind of opened up filmmaking to effects that had never been possible before. The same thing happened with digital around the time of Jurassic Park coming out. Filmmakers said, well, those makeup effects were great, but they can't jump, and they can't smile very well, and they can't run as fast as puppets. And so they started writing all these movies with digital characters in them. And it was a catchphrase then. So all these young filmmakers said, well, let's go digital, because it just sounded hip and it sounded cool. And they didn't even really know what digital meant back then. But it was a huge blow to our industry for years and years and years. And what's happened in the past, 3, 4, 5 years is a couple of things that have brought practical effects back. And one of them, it's really come full circle. One of them is all the filmmakers that grew up on the, the movies of the 80s and early 90s. They were kids then. Now they're making their own movies, and they want to go back to that kind of nostalgic feeling that they had when they saw the movies that we worked on. So that's one thing. And now the catchphrase is, let's go all practical. It's like the absolute opposite as it was 20 years ago. Let's go all digital. Now they're saying, let's go all practical, which is never practical. So ultimately, I mean, every script I get, every director, every writer I talk to, we're going to go all practical. And you try, but ultimately they'll cover it up with a lot of digital stuff, or at least do it correctly, like Guillermo del Toro and Tim Burton do sometimes, which is a blend of the two things. Now, the other thing that's happened is that, oh my God, if streaming hadn't happened, I think our industry would be dead now. I think that the digital comeuppance would have been the nail in the coffin. But what's happened over these past 10 years is that, back in the 80s and 90s, we had 4, 5, 6 customers. We had Universal, we had the television stations, the 3 big televisions, ABC, NBC, CBS, maybe HBO, but we just had the big studios, and we had the big television and the big cable, and that was it. So there's a handful of customers. Can you even count how many new movies Netflix alone puts out now? Let's talk about Hulu. All of these streaming services. So the demand for effects now is 10, 20-fold what it used to be, at least. And so there's a lot more effects happening right now. And the business, in some ways, is stronger now, I think, because of that, because there's a huge demand for effects. I mean, just look at, 20 years ago, nobody said, well, let's make a dead body for an autopsy. They just put a human on the autopsy table, with maybe a Y incision on it. But now, the go-to is to make a full-on dead body, which costs $20,000 at least, maybe 50. There's just so much demand for the stuff right now that it's really created a resurgence. On the other hand, along with the virus, maybe we can get into that right now a bit, but it's really because there are so many companies now. We know that Stan Winston, unfortunately, has passed away. We know that Rick Baker closed his studio. We know that I closed mine. We know that Rob Bottin's out of the picture. So who does that leave? From the old guard, that leaves ADI. Kevin Yeager works very, very rarely when he wants to. I think he just did the new Bill and Ted film. But there's like nobody left from the old days, right? So every other company that's fighting for this work right now is the new regime. And they're the young goth kids with the purple hair and the tattoos. And they are fighting like rabid hyenas for scraps. So the price goes down and down and down. The time frame for building goes down and down and down. And so the business is even though there's more work right now, the business is much more cutthroat, I think, than it was. And the prices have gone down and the build times have gone down. And it's very difficult and almost impossible, very, very rare to see something that was created with painstaking love and care like we used to see in the 80s and 90s. It's usually just done as quickly as possible. There are some incredible Odd Studio is one of my favorite studios. The one in Australia. Do you know those guys?
Maybe if I saw some of the stuff they were doing.
Yeah, they're amazing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, right now there's a huge, very talented company in almost every country in the world. I mean, there are great people in France. There's obviously great people in England. There's great people in Canada. I know a couple of people in Mexico. The talent hasn't shrunk just because of the time frames and the budget shrinking.
Yeah.
But they have, and I think part of that has to do with the fact that all the internet, for one, so all of this information is shared much more readily, and secondly, things like the Stan Winston School, and it's more of a global community now. I mean, I think that the effects industry has become so much more of a huge family than it used to be because of the internet. Because we're always sharing ideas and showing our work, and everybody talks and everybody learns from it. And so, I mean, there's a good side and there's a bad side. no money, no time, but all this talent, all this information, all this knowledge shared so freely all over the world.
Well, that's very cool. Thanks for sharing that. That's really good insight. I mean, as somebody who's a complete outsider, I don't know the inner workings of the film industry, let alone the subset of the special effects industry. But I bet it's a unique perspective that you have, having, you know, lived through it and see these changes kind of in real time. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing. I mean, listen, the state of the art, no matter what the prices and timeframes are, the state of the art is getting better and better and better and better. I mean, I'm losing my mind. But the fact is, the techniques that we use and the materials that we use have had to evolve along with filmmaking techniques. I mean, high definition. I mean, I'm reading they're starting to go with 12K. 12K? What, are you going to be able to see around things? You're going to have to do things? What do you need 12K for? But what that means is, you know, a movie like, or a makeup like Gary Oldman as Winston Churchill in The Darkest Hour, or what's his name in Vice? Who played the Dick Cheney in Vice?
Oh, Christian Bale.
Yeah, and all the stuff Kazoo is doing, those makeups on what's that new movie? God damn it! With the three girls that are wearing prosthetic makeups, Nicole Kidman and
don't know.
Bombshell.
Oh, right.
These makeups are unbelievable. And there's an old age makeup on John Lithgow that is one of the best, maybe the best old age makeup I've ever seen. But here's the thing. Producers, directors used to be really afraid of putting someone in a foam rubber likeness makeup or an age makeup because that's an opaque product. Foam rubber is inherently white, and you've got to be Vincent van Gogh to break up the color and trick the camera into thinking it's translucent, because skin is translucent. And then the edges are always a problem, particularly around the eyes, because that skin is so thin and translucent there, and how do you get under the eyelashes? And if you have a bad makeup, what that's going to do, it's basically going to pull the audience right out of your movie, and it'll ruin your movie. It's a lot of responsibility. Now, with the new high definition stuff, guess what? That we had to evolve, and what that's once again doing is that's allowing producers and directors and writers to say, oh my God, we can do anything. We can do a bunch of old age makeups. We can do likeness makeup. So we're seeing a lot more of that for, again, two reasons. Because one, we're using silicone, which is translucent, and the edges are so easy to blend. They practically blend themselves. They are invisible almost in person. It's so different. It's a game changer than compared to foam rubber. And then secondly, it takes much less time to paint because it's translucent already. It's already intrinsically colored, the same color generally as the skin of your actor, so it doesn't take as much time to paint. Jesus Christ. And also, you know, it holds up in close-ups on HD. And so we're seeing crazy, beautiful. Dick Smith is spinning in his grave right now. The godfather of our industry, who did The Exorcist, The Godfather, Taxi Driver, Amadeus, all of these things. If only he were still around to see what's happening, because you see these makeups just constantly pop up online and in major movies that nobody would have ever attempted before, because, like I said, it could potentially ruin the film. Now, the other thing about it is, if there's a problem, because there are problems always with techniques, edges start lifting, the sweat underneath the skin creates bubbles. Well, guess what? In the old days, if you had an edge lifting or if you had a problem, that was it. Your audience saw that on a 40-foot screen, but now it can be digitally touched up. So the producers are very calm about it now, because even though the makeup techniques are better and the quality is better, if there is indeed a problem, it can be fixed.
Right. It's interesting. It's kind of like the technology kind of dictates that the everything has to catch up with each other. So nobody can. You have to develop these new techniques in order to, if you're going to have 12K or I didn't even know there was another K. Pat, I've heard of 8, but I didn't know you could get past 8.
I know, at least from my reading, you're a huge Stephen King fan.
Yes.
And you had the opportunity to, I assume, work with him on the stand. And yes. From what my understanding is he kind of encouraged you, or at least, I guess, motivated you to write Rubberhead. And I just wanted to kind of hear about the book and the genesis of that, and how that is going currently, because I know it's going to be 5 volumes, and where you're at with that.
Yeah, well, I guess strangely enough, at 2 o'clock, on my time zone, just an hour and a half ago, I had a conference call with my publisher, and well, I mean, in 2006, I closed my doors because I was like thinking, well, this industry's dead because of digital revolution, and even if it's not dead, I'm going to be working out of a sweaty garage instead of a beautiful 20,000 square foot state-of-the-art facility like I had. And, there'll never be these multi-million-dollar contracts again, which I was dead wrong. I mean, take a look. I just saw that new Kristen Stewart film, Underwater. Have you seen that?
Not yet.
Yeah.
I heard some good stuff though.
Well, take a look at the deep diving suits for that. I mean, they're outrageous, and there's at least 6 of them. They had to work underwater. There's stunt versions, all of this. That's a huge endeavor. I'm not 100% with the design, but they're outrageous. I mean, that was a multi-million-dollar project. So, why did I bring up Underwater? What were we talking about?
Just
the Genesis of
your
Rubberhead.
publisher, yeah.
Rubberhead. Oh yeah. So I thought the industry was dying, and boy was I wrong about that. Although it did have a huge slump for years and years. And at that time, I went to Costa Rica and I started writing. And I wrote a couple of fiction novels, and I moved back to Texas, not to California, so I could be around my family for a while. And I moved to Austin. I moved to, God, where else? I went to Tennessee for a while. I went to Louisiana for a while. I went all over the place, just writing and trying to lick my wounds from the film industry. And, I couldn't get published. I just could not get my fiction work published, because it was all fiction. I couldn't get my fiction work published. And so all the agents and all the publishers I spoke with said, look, you've got somewhat of a name in the film industry, write about the film industry. And so when I finally moved back to California, which I don't even remember when it was, 2010 maybe, I just picked up my pen and I thought, okay, I don't want to make this a regular memoir where it starts out when I was born and gradually goes through chronologically my life. I want to pick the funniest stories, the most outrageous stories, the saddest stories on the biggest movies with the biggest actors I've worked with. And so that's kind of how it came about. And originally, it was like 1,000 pages, and I didn't even want to have photos in it. I wanted it to be more like an Anthony Bourdain Kitchen Confidential thing, which was kind of, expose the underbelly of the restaurant industry. But, I couldn't get it published. I couldn't get it published. It was a 1,000-page book. What was I thinking? And so finally I broke it into 5 volumes. And yes, volume 2 is running obscenely late on the Kickstarter. The book's finished. Here it is.
There it is.
Cool. Very cool.
Cool.
However, we're having a really hard time because I'm with a new publisher this time. From delay to delay, unfortunately, we ended up putting our order in right as the virus kicked in, because we're printing in China this time. I guess I don't even need to explain what happened.
Nope.
The printer shut down. They recently reopened, but they're 3 months behind in the queue, and then it's 3 months from then to get them printed and shipped to me. So we're still a long way out on that. But that's how Rubberhead started. Obviously, some of you guys have read it. Anybody read it?
Yep.
I've not yet.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love the section where you talked about working with Michael Jackson. It was a long chapter, but it even though the storytelling, just the ups and downs of the whole thing, and then you figured out how to turn him into a robot.
And then they fired me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, what I've found about this series so far, because I have, just to satiate the Kickstarter backers on volume 2, I sent out the ebook, and I've gotten nothing but really, really good reviews on it. But a lot of people don't like to read these days. The attention span is they just look at the pictures, which kills me, because to me, first and foremost, these books, this series of books, is obviously you jerk off and look at the pictures of your favorite movies. That's great. I understand that. I do it too. Hey, look, Scooby-Doo. But
Exact quote. I've said that.
But I'm really proud of the writing, because like I said, I had written many short stories, and I think 3 finished novels, fiction novels. And so I really had cut my teeth on figuring out how to write a narrative by the time I started Rubberhead. And it kills me that people don't, that's not their first and foremost thing, because, you know, it is a weird book. You know, it's very weird. And it's going to get weirder as the volumes continue, because volume 2 is very much, there's a ghost story woven in and out of it. Volume 2 basically concentrates on the greatest hits of the 80s. I mean, it covers Fright Night, it covers Big Trouble in Little China, Poltergeist 2. I don't even remember, I have to look now. But you know, to me, it's not just a picture book. It's not just an art book. It's a book.
Yeah, and I love too on the audiobook that you break the rules. So you'll interject with some thoughts that you're thinking as you're reading it, and not just reading it verbatim. And
oh, I totally go off script. I know, and I'm dying to do the audio version on this because that was a blast. It was so fun. It took about 4 or 5 nights, about 4-hour sessions each. But unfortunately, the guy, they're actually we're in production right now on a documentary based on the book series. Documentary called Rubberhead.
Oh, awesome.
And special effects. Yeah, we've been shooting for about a year now, but the guy that's going to record the audiobook for volume 2 is in New York. He's my producer for for the documentary, and you know, he's taking care of his 85-year-old dad, and he doesn't want to fly, and so everything's fucked up and on hold now because of this.
Yep.
Steve, I had a question. You're very associated, obviously, with Ghostbusters in our community. Everybody knows the stories about the creation of Slimer and you know, all of that. One thing, though, I'm a collector. I'm a toy collector. I'm as you can probably see behind me. When it comes to toys and when it comes to the designs of Slimer, Green Ghost over the years, whether it be, you know, maquettes or models or statues, or, you know, what we saw in the last Ghostbusters movie, or maybe the next one, we don't know yet. What do you think it is that I feel like they never get it right? Like they never actually capture exactly what you designed. There's obviously a lot of subtleties to the design that make it so stand out, but the Ghostbusters 1 Slimer specifically is obviously, you know, the best. It's the first and the best. And they just, when I say they, I mean just anybody who tackles a replication of any kind, they never quite nail it.
I'm glad you mentioned that, but I couldn't agree with you more, and it's offensive to me. And I think there's a couple of I think there's a couple. Like if you take a look, and I've gone on public record saying this before, and I know the sculptor quite well, Mark Siegel. He worked on Ghostbusters 1, but he sculpted the Slimer for Ghostbusters 2, and there's so many inherent problems with that. It's awful. And that was just like a year and a half later. It's fucking awful. It's terrible. Not only does it look terrible, but they show. I've seen the interior mechanics, but they took the exact opposite approach that I did to it. Whereas it's just so crammed full of motors, and they're not even hydraulic, which are smooth motors, and not servos, which are somewhat smooth. It's pneumatic, which is like air motors. This is a horrible, and so therefore you don't get any wobble of the skin, you don't get the big mouth thing happening, you don't get the brows squinching, you don't get any of that Tex Avery cartoon stuff. Because when we did Ghostbusters 1, my whole goal was to make it like to not use what Rick Baker or Rob Bottin or Greg Cannon taught me, where you just stick a bicycle cable and, you know, make it smile. I wanted to get these huge cartoon. So there's just a bunch of people sticking their hands in it, wearing black suits. There's rods inside of it. There's even the tongue is a glove. So I just don't know. I think sometimes, not in Mark's case, who did the hey, stop it, buddy. Stop that. When he's hungry, you know what he does? He does one of two things. He sneaks up behind me. Stop. He sneaks up behind me and just slides his needles right into my back. And it's like, oh my fucking God.
I love that.
It's not a good way. But the other thing he'll do when he's really hungry is he'll sit on my desk and he'll just not put his claws out at all, but he'll just very softly touch my face. That one works. What were we talking about? Yeah, so Mark's a good sculptor. Part of it is because that thing was so amorphous and so blobby, and because it did indeed change shapes all the time. So every still you look at it, it looks like a different sculpture. So people are like, I don't even know what I'm sculpting, because what is it? You know, it looks different in all the different scenes, because it is. And I've had the same problem. I sculpted a Slimer mask for Spirit Halloween stores a couple of years back, and they kept sending pictures to me and saying, no, this isn't right. And they would send me a picture of Slimer from Ghostbusters 2, or that horrible bank. Have you seen that bank?
Yeah.
Oh,
It looks like a turd.
atrocious.
It looks like a turd that was painted green. It's so bad.
Yeah.
That thing is so horrible. So, that proves it. They're like telling the guy that designed it and sculpted the first one that my Slimer doesn't look like the one from the movie because they're sending me a picture from,
Right.
and then you got the cartoon, you've got all this other stuff. I'll tell you one thing, though. Lately, the designs have been getting a lot better for one good reason. Maybe a couple. I put out a little Slimer figure on the first Kickstarter. Did you guys see that, the glowing Slimer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And,
Yep, there's one behind me over here.
there's pictures of it. The people have it, and so they can see exactly what it looks like. And secondly, NECA and one other company put out the full-scale one from a sculpture that I commissioned. Have you seen the big one?
Yeah. I got a buddy who has the NECA one.
Yeah, so that's based on is a remold off of a sculpture that I had a guy named Andy Schoenberg do at my studio as a display piece because the originals were long lost. So he had access to all the original photos. He had me art directing it, and so now that's out there. And so now there's a lot more three-dimensional real world reference. So I'm seeing some products that are actually pretty good now.
Getting better. And it's kind of weird. Like, so you were at FanFest last year, and it's kind of cool to get all the. Even though the event itself was
FanFest, where was that?
That was the one on the Sony lot. The
oh yeah.
Yeah, we were all there. A little chaotic, but still fun to to get everybody together. Do you have any regular contact with anybody at Ghost Corps or Sony? Do they ever hit you up for anything, whether it's ideas, reference it, looking at reference photos, signing off?
I get stuff all the time. I'm dealing with another company right now. I've been dealing with them for a few months that have the license now to do. They want to license my the little glowing one I made.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Which is cool because all I got to do is send that to China. They're going to change the arm position, but so it looks different. But no, I can't even tell you how many people call me about Slimer. It's crazy.
He haunts you.
But what really bugs me is I was not. I really wanted to be involved with the new Jason Reitman thing because I know they made it. Well, even the all-female version. There was a practical Slimer made for that. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that. Are you?
Yeah, I saw some pictures of it earlier this year for the first time.
It's right up there. I don't know which one wins for worst Slimer Ghostbusters 2 or that. It's like no wonder they redid it digitally. I mean, it looked pretty good. However, my designer of years and years and years, a Greek guy named Konstantin Sakaris, who designed all my stuff with me for a long, long time, maybe over a decade. He was brought in to design the digital version of both the female and the regular Slimer, and he did a really good job because he worked with me for years and he knew what it looked like. So I like that one. However, on this new Jason Reitman one, and I called them. I went after them like crazy on the all-female version, saying, "Let me do it. I've got even better ideas this year, or this time at this point." And no, I'm probably too old school for them or whatever. But this time around, they hired Arian Tweeten. Do you know the guy?
I'm not familiar with that name.
Yeah, he's one of Rick Baker's proteges, and he did that movie Wonder, that little kid that's got that weird.
Yep.
Yeah, and he did Maleficent. He did the makeup on Angelina Jolie. So he's really talented. I'm not sure I've ever seen him do. Hey, buddy, get out of the way. I'm not sure I've ever seen him do a large-scale animatronic, but we'll see. We'll see soon enough.
Yeah.
But no, it's like they kicked Ivan Reitman off the all-female version. They said basically, because Ivan was my contact on that, but they said, you're too old. You don't have the sense of humor the kids want to hear. So
yeah. There's a book that's going to be written. One day there's going to be a whole lot of stuff that comes out about the production of that movie specifically.
Yeah.
I actually, I want to tag on to the Slimer conversation. I did have one. I don't want to be a nerd and ask a nerd question, Steve, but I do have one that bugged me.
Yeah.
Slimer has a great ass, and I just wanted to know if that was your idea, your design to give Slimer like all that junk in the trunk, or was it something that that they pitched to you, or because I mean his ass is fantastic, you know.
Who's
So I
talking?
just kind of wanted to hear
I
about
don't see any lips moving. Who's talking?
That's Tom.
my image is frozen. It seems.
Oh, okay. No, that was actually my idea because I'll tell you why. If you look at the profile of Slimer, it's got kind of a C shape where his face is up here and then his back bows in, and then he's got the butt, and the rest of the body comes up like this. And that's a very typical profile for a Tex Avery cartoon. And it also is the way Herman Munster used to walk. He would put his back in and his butt out and do this kind of stuff. You know, if you look at him from a profile, he's doing that thing. And also, if you take a look at what Rob Bottin did on Explorers, same kind of thing. It's that cartoony kind of C-back with the big butt. And so I'm standing there looking at this thing, and it's got the right profile. It's got the right belly shape in the front. What do I do with that huge, giant piece of clay in the back? Well, it was his butt. You know, I mean, all you would have to do is stick legs on that thing, and it would look like a big, fat, green Herman Munster.
Matt and I had a question. When we were searching for images of you, you know, for the signing we're going to be doing in the group, I found one picture of you and Linda Frobos working on one of the Terror Dogs.
Right.
And that was news to both of us. We didn't know that you had any involvement in the Terror Dog, and I just wanted to know, you know, kind of what your role was there, and if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was news to me too when I saw that picture. I'm like, I don't even remember helping in that thing. But you know, it was, you know, we had the Ghost Shop on at Boss Film Corporation on Ghostbusters. It was just a blast. It was the first show we did there, and so we were all making up the rules as we went along, and it was just so much fun. It was like one of the funnest times I've ever had, because that also was the first time I was really in charge of something. So it was like a playground. And I didn't have to worry about the budgets or the money. It all came from the front office, and so they just said, do whatever you want, hire whoever you want. You want to stick feathers all over something, put a man on it. We don't care. So we just all jumped in and helped when we had a deadline. And so, I mean, it's not like I was coming in and saying, no, do it like this. I think we probably had a deadline for molding, and so we all jumped in and helped do it. Well, the way Ghostbusters worked, to repeat myself ad nauseum, is that Randy Cook, the famed stop motion animator, who also won 3 consecutive Oscars on the Lord of the Rings trilogy for visual effects, was my partner on that show. And so in the beginning, we just split the work up. We said, well, how to do this? And so I took Slimer, I took the cab driver, I took the subway ghost, I took the librarian, and Randy took the Terror Dogs.
It was real fair, real even split.
Yeah, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was kind of a, you know, basically Bill Bryan was kind of in charge of it underneath Randy and I. But still, Randy and I were the co-heads of the studio, and Bill was talented enough. We said, hey, just make it, and if you need any help, we're here.
So you did the subway ghost as well, the blue one that kind of flies out toward the end of the, like, I think it's right around the taxi ghost.
It's when all the ghosts start escaping. Yeah, I did. It was it's not blue actually. Maybe it looked blue in the final film, but it was a very translucent, ruddy kind of reddish brown color.
Oh,
it had iridescent powder in it, and we shot that actually in a water tank.
Oh,
we shot it underwater.
That's new.
As a marionette.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we shot it as a marionette and a rod puppet in one of the cloud tanks at Boss Film, because it was just easier. Because, you know, and that was one of the first times I actually worked underwater. I've worked underwater a lot since, obviously on The Abyss, on Sphere, Anaconda, and I learned that very technique on Ghostbusters with the library ghost is that, not the library, the subway ghost is that, fuck, stick it in water, and water does 90% of the work for you.
It's very true.
And Steve, you know, on the production Ghostbusters, I've seen some conflicting titles for you. What would you say was your actual title on the?
Yeah, they're very conflicting, and it bugs me to this day. Thank you for bringing that up, actually. Rob Bottin excised my name from The Howling, and I was one of his top guys for 4 or 5 months on that show. He took my name off the credits because we had a falling out, which annoys the shit out of me. But the same thing on that. I think my credit is Onion Head and Librarian Sculptor. That's it? What about the cab driver? What about the librarian? What about the fact that Randy and I ran that fucking show? It should have been, co-department supervisor with Randy Cook for all the ghosts and everything. I mean, we figured out, there was no difference between the way Randy and I ran that company as the way Rob Bottin or Rick Baker runs theirs. You've got a guy at the top who hires a bunch of other people, art directs them, and then gets in and gets their hands dirty when they can. That was exactly how we ran that show. And I was mortally offended with my credit on that. And I guess I won't care once I'm dead and in La La Land or wherever we go. But
it wasn't just you. We had a conversation with.
Everybody gives me credit for everything that we did on Bouldergeist 2. Everybody gives me credit for at Lost Film Corporation, everything that we did on Ghostbusters, everything that we did on Fright Night. But Randy was there. I think Randy just doesn't like the publicity. I try to get him to go to conventions. He doesn't want to do it. I try to get him involved in documentaries. He doesn't want to do it. So basically, over the years, everybody just moves the credit to me, which I'm perfectly fine with, but I feel bad about Randy.
We can speak to Randy. We've tried to reach out to him as well for our group, because he is the Terror Dogs, and a lot of people love those, and a lot of people our age, they were terrified by the Terror Dogs when they were kids.
Right. But
and we'd love to work with him.
But has he gotten back to you? See, that's my point.
No. Yeah.
I should just start taking credit for the Terror Dogs too. Right, Randy? What do you think?
We have proof. We have photo proof.
Linda Frobos? That's right.
Very, very good. It's interesting, the credit thing, just real quickly. We had a conversation with Terry Hardin. I'm not sure if you worked directly with her on the film or not.
Yeah,
she also told a story. Yeah, so she tells a story about how her and Mark Wilson and a bunch of people just didn't get credit at all. And Richard Edlund had to take out an ad in Variety, I think it was, to give them all credit after the movie hit. And so we actually tracked down a copy of that ad for her that listed all these unsung heroes, Sam Longoria, all these people that didn't get credited in the film after the fact. So it's interesting that you've got a similar situation going on.
Well, the thing is, back then, the makeup effects industry was kind of new in the animatronics industry, and so people didn't really know how to deal with the credits. That's part of it. But also, as opposed to now, where you'll have 45 minutes of digital companies, and everybody and their mother and their dogs get credit on it. It's always been a very difficult thing to get credit for people. I fought that and fought that and fought. You go into your initial contract negotiations, and they'll tell you before on a Spider-Man 2, Dr. Octopus, they'll tell you in the beginning, you get 12 credits and that's it. And I'm like, but I'm going to have 95 people work on this movie. Nope, you get 12 credits. I swear to God, they're going to wheel me out in a wheelchair when I'm 100 years old and say, how did you make Slimer?
Yeah. That's actually, maybe as like a final thing, like, you do a lot of conventions, you've done them over the years. And like, I always, I love going to panels and I love attending those kinds of things, but I'm always kind of like holding anytime somebody stands up and asks a question, I'm just like, oh no, here we go. Because it's either the same stuff or just something where it's just like, oh, don't ask that. Nobody wants,
That you wasted your question with that one.
Right. So. I was at a panel once with Christopher Lloyd, and somebody waited in line and asked. His question was, "Did Christopher Lloyd enjoy acting?" So it's just like, ugh, all right. He does.
I didn't ask him about the Jim Ignatowski character because he fucking hates that.
Oh, interesting.
I did a movie with him, and he actually sounds like that character. I did a movie called Suburban Commando. It was a Hulk Hogan film.
Oh yeah.
Oh hell yeah.
Full-bodied alien. We made Hulk's ridiculous armor for it as well. But I was with Bill Corso. Hey, will you stop being so cute? I was with Bill Corso, Oscar-winning makeup artist, used to art direct my company. Bill Corso just so happens to do the world's greatest Jim Ignatowski impersonation. But everybody before we went on set said, don't, you cannot do that. You cannot. Don't bring up Jim Ignatowski. Probably for the same reason I get a little annoyed at people bringing up Slimer. Except for you guys. Right. No, there's so much more interesting stuff. Right. Like I did like a 2-week. Have you heard of the Brussels International Fantastic Film Festival? Every effects person, not every effects, but every genre person has been there as a guest, and It's a 2-week film festival. They had to cancel it this year because of COVID, but I was the president of the jury last year. And will you stop it? And I had to do so many things, besides watch all the movies and judge the movies for the rest of the panel. I had to do a master class. I had to do this. I had to do that. I was on stage constantly. And at one point, I just got so tired of talking about the same old movies that we talked about AI instead, which I thought had a little bit of a connection, which it does.
Yeah,
That's
for
very
sure.
cool.
Hey,
Look at this guy.
it took everything. Look at him. Stealing the show here. It took everything not to ask you about the nipples from Species that shoot cables out, but
Yeah, well, you can hardly see that in the film. We did do that. They actually, they rotate inside, and then we did a reverse shot. Can you see that in the film, where it actually comes out of her tit?
It doesn't. You won't see it actually come out. I think
doesn't it?
I haven't
Oh,
seen
yeah,
Species
it
in a
does.
long time. Long time. I mean,
Oh,
well, I could
okay.
talk about Suburban Commando all day. Isn't there? What I've been racking my brain. There's a Ghostbusters connection to Suburban Commando, and I can't remember what it is. It's like a prop or I think there's a PKE meter.
PKE.
Is
There's a
reused.
what?
Yeah.
The PKE meter from Ghostbusters, the prop is reused as one of Hulk Hogan's holding one at one point in the movie.
That's interesting. There's another connection. Do you know what that one is?
You're the connection. Gotcha.
Gotcha.
Cool.
I'm glad that we were able to talk today, and thank you again so much for doing the signing with our group. We're really excited for that. We'll keep you constantly updated, and just thanks for being accessible to the fans and putting up with our nerdy questions. We thank
Oh,
you.
you bet. This is fun. I mean, I can't turn down a podcast or anything now. What the fuck else am I going to do?
That's funny. That's funny.
Craig just went on alert.
Yeah, I might have to. We might have to do another follow-up or something.
No, this was fun though. I appreciate it. So, let me cut my book though. They just gone up with the publisher.
Oh yes, of course.
You can. God damn it. Well, you can still order Rubberhead Volume 1 on Amazon, and you can also get the audiobook on Audible now. Not selling them off my website anymore, so it's more legit now. So, Rubberhead Volume 1, I think you can pre-order Rubberhead Volume 2 on Amazon, but the better way to get Rubberhead Volume 2 is to go to darkinkpublishing.com.
Cool.
Dark Ink
Publishing.
You can get Rubberhead Volume 2, and it's got the Predator story in it, from my lips to your ears. It's got everything in it.
Awesome.
The Jean-Claude Van Damme photos, I hear.
What's that?
Jean-Claude Van Damme photos in there?
Yes, it does. It's the greatest hits of the 80s, all wrapped up in a ghost story, a true ghost story. It's a really fun book. And like I said, it's already finished, darkinkpublishing.com.
Cool. I'm looking at
Awesome.
it right now. Very cool. Well, thank you, Steve. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. It was a lot of fun, you guys.
All right.
The cat enjoyed it too.
We'll
Bye, Chaos. Bye.
take it easy, Kaos.